care of a road has pitted a Cambria County borough against Conrail. The matter is now being decided by the Public Utility Commission, and a decision is expected soon. Conrail and the Cambria County borough of Sankertown are at odds over this underpass. Motorists bump and bounce along this section of Front Street that looks like it would be better suited to wagons than cars. At first glance, this looks like bumpy, potholed pavement. But take a closer look. It turns out this is ice, inches thick. Sankertown Borough Mayor Cyril Adams contacted Action News about the problem and what's being done to solve it. Whose responsibility is this?
Well, we say it's a railroad, and the railroad said it's a town. So that's who we're fighting right now through the PUC.
The Public Utility Commission has been working on the case for 4 years.
That first judge that had the case, he died. Now another one has it, and it's going through him now.
Action News talked with the PUC, and we were told a decision is expected within a week. The people who have suffered through years of this torturous travel may wonder why the borough hasn't already done something to fix the problem before now, regardless of the PUC's decision.
The borough can't spend no money. They don't have any. They're broke.
And Mayor Adams says the underpass has made life miserable for motorists, not only in the winter, but in the summer as well. He says the underpass is flooded to a depth where small children even went swimming in it. Craig Demchak, TV 10 Action News, Sankertown, Cambria County. Bring clay to life like never before. Dennis Michael has more.
I'll tell you the trick, but it comes from imagination. It comes from ways that you can create an effect and make something come to life.
From commercials to music video to special effects in full-length films such as Return to Oz, Will Vinton is turning viewers on to a different kind of animation.
Let's turn to technology.
The technology of claymation is at once simple and complex. A plasticine figure is moved minutely before a camera, animated frame by frame.
You make just slight movements, make a little bit of movement, say if you want to turn his head, shoot a frame, make a little bit more movement. And that it gives the illusion of motion, of course, and they come to life.
Wrong. Even you can see. Oh.
Vinton leads over 24 clay animators at his studio in Portland, Oregon, working on projects for film and television. The process is a slow one.
Maybe 6 seconds in a day, but on some kinds of very, very difficult processes, you might shoot as little as 15 frames in a day, which isn't even 1 second. Good things take time. That's all there is to it.
A collection of Vinton short films are currently on display at selected theaters in the Festival of Claymation. Meanwhile, Vinton is doubling his staff to keep up with demand. He prefers doing the work to talking about it.
Talking about the process, in a way, degrades the magic so much.
First time. The young man has an impeccable background as far as we've been able to find. He was a nice kid from a nice family, and that's the tragedy of this thing.
Burke says he can't be certain, but there's strong evidence that the cocaine that killed McCloskey was a cheaper but very potent form of the drug known as crack. 3 sets of parents.
The weather, spectators have been warned to stand well clear of the roadside. Many ignored the warning. That was a horrible mistake. One person was killed in that terrible accident. 13 others were injured. A similar accident killed 2 people at a Portuguese road rally a year ago. The driver in today's accident can...
Today, the mother and wife decided to share her story with Kimberly Adams. Kimberly?
Ray, as we've talked about before, this is really an incredible story. The Burke family story goes like this. Patrick Burke, the father, contracted AIDS through a blood transfusion. He was a hemophiliac, and he got that transfusion back in 1984. He unknowingly passed the AIDS virus on to his wife, Lauren, who then in turn passed the disease on to her unborn son. Until that son was born, no one even knew that the Burke family had AIDS. Well, the Burke family has been battling AIDS since September of 1984, and I will tell you, it is a fight filled with unbelievable anguish. Lauren Burke buried her son Dwight in December of '85. Last week, in a grave next to Dwight, she buried her husband.
0044.
As the immune vulnerable illness, doctors know little about this disease and can do virtually nothing to stop it. There is also a society-imposed stigma to AIDS. It is a slow, painful wasting away, and Lauren watched it twice.
I'm a nurse, and I've seen suffering, and I've seen pain, but I've never, ever seen as much pain as Patrick went through.
Through it all, Lauren has had to worry about her own health. She has AIDS-related complex. That means she carries the virus and has a 30% chance of developing AIDS. What keeps Lauren going is her daughter, Nikki, a preschooler with more sensitivity tucked into her 6 years than most adults.
She's pretty smart, and she's helped me a lot.
Doctors and family members point to Nikki as living proof that AIDS is not transmissible through casual contact. She shows no trace of the virus. But Nikki is a victim of the disease. She's lost a brother, a father, and is in danger of losing her mother, all because of AIDS.
It's just the hardest thing. It's just sometimes you just don't feel like you can go on losing two important people in your life. They say time heals, but I don't know.
Unfortunately, the Burke story is not over, and I'd be less than honest with you if I didn't tell you they need help. Now, Ray and Patty, Lauren did not ask me to do this or to say this to our audience, but I do feel an obligation, if you will, to tell everyone there is a Burke family fund to help with mounting medical expenses. They still have leftover bills that are in the tens of thousands of dollars.
How does one find out about that foundation or contribute to it, Kimberly?
They could get in touch with me here. It is set up through a bank in their hometown of Cresson, Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Well, police
see the sky, or at least you've exploits on the news, rescuing victims of accidents from remote areas. More and more big city hospitals are using helicopters to transport patients because they can rise above the snarls of traffic that plague conventional emergency ambulances. This is a fast-growing new industry. It is popular, it's beneficial, and certainly well-intentioned. And yet Tom Jarrell has discovered some very real problems with these so-called angels of mercy.
They seem to be everywhere. At automobile accident scenes, buzzing through the canyons of downtown skyscrapers over traffic gridlock below, landing on church parking lots or plowed fields 24 hours a day, venturing wherever there's trouble.
Life Flight 3, scene shooting.
Retrieving gunshot victims, accident victims, burn victims, or those stricken by heart attack or stroke. Emergency medical helicopters carrying a specialized team with advanced first aid equipment are in the skies in growing numbers. Tragically, they're also falling from the skies so often. The question is being raised, are these choppers angels of mercy or machines of death?
The accident rate is outrageously high. Am I correct in stating that the accident rate for medical helicopters is 1,500 times as high as the commercial aviation accident rate? Wouldn't it be accurate to say that such a rate is alarmingly high and without any precedent?
It's too high, and we are focusing on it. It is an area in which we must control.
Engen is answering questions about the fastest growing segment of the aviation industry, the emergency medical service helicopters, which have the worst accident rate in aviation history. They crash about 5 times as often as other choppers and more than 100 times as often as commercial airplanes. Consider December 3rd, 1986. 7 people die in 2 separate accidents, 4 in Tennessee, 3 in Oregon. A month earlier, Kodiak, Alaska, 6 die. In South Georgia in February, 4 servicemen die when their chopper hits the treetops on a medical mission. And in North Carolina this January, a pilot and medical team die along with their young patient, 3-1/2-month-old Xenia Lewis, daughter of a Marine Corps couple. She was being transferred on a non-critical mission.
At the time, I thought she was going by ambulance. Really, I did. But they told me she had died on the helicopter. Why? That's all I could ask is why. What was she doing on the helicopter?
And it has yet to be explained why she was on the helicopter. It has yet to be explained.
The tragic case of the young Marine Corps couple points out the dilemma of emergency medical helicopters. They can save lives, yes, but they're also taking lives of patients, medics, and pilots. Why?
I've been flying when I was so fatigued that I was dozing at the controls.
Don Wright is a former pilot with Herman Hospital in Houston, the largest hospital-run EMS program in the country.
The first thing to go with the chronic long-term fatigue is pilot judgment. And the problem there is compounded by the fact that it's not recognizable to oneself.
Pilot fatigue is cited as the #1 concern of the men who fly emergency medical helicopters.
I'm a military-trained pilot with Vietnam experience. I've flown in the Arctic.
Rick Stroud was once what they called a white knight, a pilot willing to challenge the odds to make an emergency medical rescue. He was fired for refusing to work a 75-hour week.
Our schedule was planned to work 295.99 hours a month.
A month?
A month.
So what do long hours have to do with helicopter crashes?
Many times you'd find yourself making minor, seemingly apparent minor mistakes, maybe failure to turn on your anti-collision light, maybe failure to tune a specific radio, or to make an appropriate radio call to the tower. As was
Wright
required.
should know, when he was a White Knight pilot, he used to respond to situations like this one. In Houston, a flash fire at an auto repair shop. A workman is seriously injured with 35% of his body burned. The medics at the scene call life flight, and within minutes, a chopper is dispatched.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The pilot and medics load the patient into the helicopter. En route, the patient's heart is monitored. Oxygen is administered, and he's given fluid resuscitation. His trip to Herman Hospital's rooftop landing pad is 10 minutes instead of the 45 it would take by ambulance. The burn victim is hurried down a corridor into a special elevator which opens into the trauma area, where 2 operating rooms are staffed and busy.
Sir, take a deep breath for me.
For those critically injured, it's a race against the clock to reach the care of expert trauma teams. The White Knight pilots are team players in that race. But Wright and several other pilots were fired from Herman last year after they signed a letter to the hospital administrator stating, quote, "There is a major compromise of safety involved with our work schedule." Herman Hospital denied to us there was a pilot schedule problem, saying their crews worked only 44 hours a week. Life Flight Director Bill LaChance.
A pilot yesterday was on duty for 12 hours. Now, that wouldn't be a 44-hour week. In 5 days, that would be over 50 hours.
Mathematically, that's correct, except that we man with more pilots than that equation would account for.
But Mr. LaChance's own statistics show that 6 of his 15 men worked over 200 hours in a 28-day period. That's more than 50 hours a week. But in this business where fatigue is a problem, it's still perfectly legal. The FAA has few regulations for this industry, which has grown from 1 EMS program 11 years ago to 165 today. Last fall, in a move which critics call irresponsible, the FAA changed its rules, extending the on-duty time for EMS pilots to a 16-hour day.
I want to know why you liberalized the safety requirements in October of last year in the teeth of 2 straight years of an unprecedentedly high accident rate. Why did you liberalize the requirements?
I can't give you a direct answer why they were liberalized. But
the FAA chief simply couldn't explain this to Senator Gore, and he refused 2020's request for an interview. But we did hear his explanation for the high EMS accident rate. He blamed it on the White Knight pilot syndrome.
They literally almost kill themselves in trying to get the job done, and that's the mentality we have to get to. It's very difficult to tell a pilot or get a pilot to admit, this is not safe, I've got to stop here and let that person die.
One of the largest insurers of EMS helicopters, U.S. Aviation Underwriters, agrees that pilots should concentrate strictly on flying and not become distracted by handling patients. Note the life flight pilot on the left as he finishes loading the patient.
He should not be asked to assist on the scene, should not be asked to carry litters or
or assist in IV bottles or that sort of thing. If his attention is distracted, basically stress, fatigue, and other aspects enter into the equation, accidents result.
The FAA doesn't keep close track of EMS accidents or incidents unless there's an injury or a fatality. So no one really knows how many medical helicopters are involved in dangerous mishaps. They did know that this chopper from Herman dropped to the ground from 800 feet when a gearbox failed. Luckily, no one was injured. The machine was badly damaged in a close call.
Was this considered a crash?
Heavens, no.
You be the judge. Here is an almost identical incident in West Lafayette, Indiana last year, involving a helicopter with a news camera rolling on board. From a height of a few hundred feet, they lose altitude and spin and pitch to the ground, auto-rotating just like they did at Herman, as seen in this unedited tape. While not precisely the same as the Herman mishap, this is an example of the kind of incident a fragile helicopter can suddenly encounter. They didn't walk away from this one like they did with a Herman chopper. Although similar, this situation involved injuries. It was considered an accident. Again, safety records can be misleading because often serious incidents are not classified as accidents unless someone gets hurt.
My seatbelt will not come undone.
Although Herman's program is large and successful, industry analysts say just last year it was involved in several dangerous incidents. Examples: transmission cowling, departed aircraft. Engine cowling was sucked into the main rotor blades. A rear luggage door came off in flight. A blade strike, origin unknown.
We've made over 40,000 takeoffs and landings without an accident involving a patient.
Well, you could liken that to a child running across the street without looking. They may get away with it for a while, but sooner or later it's going to catch up with them.
Across the country, those risks are catching up with EMS programs.
If the FAA refuses to act, then the competitive pressures in this business will continue to push hospitals in the direction of keeping the minimum number of pilots possible on each one of these, assigned to each one of these helicopters, giving them the minimum safety equipment and maintenance, and then pushing them beyond their limits, exposing the public to an unacceptable risk.
The high cost of maintaining an emergency helicopter service, critics assert, is forcing hospitals to use these choppers indiscriminately. Beside their primary role of providing speed in life or death situations, they're being increasingly used as air taxis and as a means to hustle business to fill hospital beds. Critics tell us these EMS choppers are used to harvest patients, that they compete for trauma victims. The motive? Trauma centers are one of the most expensive medical services that a hospital has to offer, with an average price tag for such specialized care of $25,000.
If you're in an accident, somebody, somewhere may decide this is just what you need for a quick ride to the hospital. And if you're badly hurt or unconscious, you'll never have a vote in the matter.
Those decisions are usually left up to policemen, firemen, or medics at the accident scene. But patient transfers from one hospital to another are decided by doctors. In Tennessee, a doctor wanted to transfer Cooper Crouch by air from Jamestown to Nashville for diagnostic tests. His widow.
I feel like that I put him on there, or had him put on there, thinking that everything would be fine.
It might have been, but Cooper Crouch was the victim of all that can go wrong in a medevac flight. As a patient, it's debatable he even needed an emergency transfer for his test. But the decision was made to fly him at night. His pilot was on a 24-hour work shift and seemed unfamiliar with the landing site.
I don't believe he had been to Jamestown before. And I think that maybe he talked with the doctor about lighting the helicopter pad a little better, or something that he could be sure he could find it there.
Shortly after takeoff, the medevac chopper slammed into the treetops, killing all aboard, including one man who was afraid to fly, the patient, Cooper Crouch.
Of course, he was strapped to his cot, which is what they always do. But I saw some of the pictures, and the cot was even warped, and his straps broken and everything. So I know it must have been a tremendous, tragic thing that happened to all of them.
Oh, dear, Tom. Some
much of the problem seems to be profit. The hospitals have to fill the beds, so they want the helicopters to take more and more patients.
Right. They're running around. They're little flying billboards for hospitals, going out and harvesting patients, as someone has put it. That's one problem. Another is there's no excuse for these pilots to be flying fatigue. They should regulate that. And the medical profession needs clear guidelines on which patients should be picked up and which don't need this rapid transport. We should point out, Barbara, that Bill LaChance has left Herman Hospital's Life Flight program and a management shakeup. They stand by what he had to say in our report entirely.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you, Tom.
Over an estimated 12 times on the way down. Denard is in serious condition at the intensive care unit at Altoona's Mercy Hospital tonight. His rig and its load, of course, were destroyed in the wreck. The crash late this afternoon demolished a tractor trailer. The in the Iran country.
And asked for a pack of coal filter 100 cigarettes. And then I asked her why she looked so badly. She turned around and just told me that her house was on fire and her kids were still in it.
Fire officials say they still need more information from the parents of the children before their investigation is complete. Fire
this morning. Their third stoner was life-flighted to West Penn's burn unit, where he is in critical condition this hour. Police say the mother had run to a convenience store for help after that fire erupted.
And a woman pulled may be in hot water after taking longer than usual to try to revive her. As the woman was rescued from the water, an Eyewitness News crew arrived on the scene, recording the event, and noted a 1-minute 30-second lag between the time the woman was rescued and the time CPR was administered. After reviewing the tape, Public Safety Director Cannon agreed the paramedics should have started administering CPR much sooner.
The rescue on shore, the resuscitation on shore, seems to have had a problem.
The investigation into the accident may be completed as early as Monday. This is the first time in Pittsburgh's history that the work of the city's paramedics has been called into question.
Speed for Sunday, May 10th, near the Blair-Cambria County line. A spokesman for Logan Township Fire Base tells Action News at least 100 acres have been burned, and the fire reportedly continues tonight, although it's been brought under control. Earlier today, the entire mountain between the Horseshoe Curve and Gallitzin caught fire. More than 12 local fire companies have been on the scene since then. An air tanker was also brought in to drop water on the brush fire from the air. One firefighter says the companies will stay out all night if necessary. Through the wreckage of that Polish jetliner that crashed yesterday, killing 183 people. They found signs that those on board knew they might not make it. An open prayer book, a child's last letter to dearest mommy. 17 of those who died were American.
To date, the Game Commission has not contacted me, which I'm very disappointed. Our whole family, we're all sportsmen. We love to hunt. And I could understand if the test would have come back negative for them not showing up. But a positive reaction was assured me 2 days later after the incident happened.
The commission maintains it's not required to do anything beyond giving advice over the phone. And in the meantime, when he went under, 5 scuba teams spent last night and most of today hunting for the body. The river was murky, and police say that hampered the search.
We were working anywhere from 8.
That's the beauty of white light. That's the beauty of white light.
Hospital, Patrick New, Jr. of Ebensburg, was life-flighted to Allegheny following a single car crash early this morning on a legislative route between Gallitzin and Coupon in Cambria County. State police say New was southbound at around 1:30 a.m. when his car crossed the northbound lane and struck a tree. Police say the car then spun and rolled onto its roof. Into the home of Tom and Dorothy Gall. The driver of the vehicle suffered only a broken leg. He had to be pried out of the wreckage, but the Galls were unhurt.
In Philadelphia, dozens of trucks, tractor-trailers, and vans blocked traffic around Veterans Stadium as Teamsters and other union members demonstrated in support of these striking football players.
This will remain a union town.
Pickets and their supporters blocked the gates and scuffled with fans who wanted to get in. Finally, the police moved in and set up a corridor to let people in. About 4,000 fans struggled into a stadium built for 60,000 and saw the Chicago Bears beat the Philadelphia Eagles. In New Jersey, there was also some support from organized labor at Meadowlands, where the New York Jets were set to play the Dallas Cowboys. But the demonstration was mild by comparison, and there was no effort to keep fans out of the stadium. Some people didn't want to get in, some people did.
Just wanted to see the Jet football team play.
Well, I don't want to watch them play. I want to see professional football.
12,000 fans sat in a mostly empty stadium to see the Cowboys beat the Jets.
The child had been a passenger in the car driven by its mother when that vehicle hit the ditch on the side of the road and flipped. As the passengers got out of the wreck, the little girl was struck by another northbound car, skidding on the icy road. Local police closed part of 219 for a time as road crews battled the sudden coating of ice. The Johnstown Expressway was just as impassable.
No, I left the bank. It was raining down in Dale. By the time I got up here, it was freezing. It just happened matter a couple minutes.
The length of the expressway looked like a war zone, littered with injured people and wrecked vehicles.
About another mile down the road here, there's 7 more in an accident with some injuries.
It's just the sudden icy condition?
Right, it's just, you can't even walk. There's all kinds of them down the road.
The biggest problem for the emergency crews responding was the conditions of the road. The ice storm came suddenly, leaving wrecks all up and down the Johnstown Expressway.
Those involved in the many accidents could hardly believe what had happened.
I looked to see what was coming behind me. When I was spinning, there was a tractor trailer. So when I went into the bank, got stopped, I just ran up over the bank and I watched this. It's horrible, horrible.
Emergency road crews were able to reopen the road shortly after the sudden ice storm, but for many drivers, the effects of the storm would be felt for some time to come. Kevin Flanagan, TV 10 Action News, the Johnstown Expressway.
19. Police say 6-year-old Tressa Primmel of Natty Glow was hit by a car that slid out of control along the roadway. The little girl had been a passenger in another car that wrecked on the side of the road. Route 219 was closed to traffic for several hours as police cleared away wrecked vehicles.
For Tuesday, January 12th.
Blaze. The fire is believed to have done serious damage to the dwelling. One area man was killed and another critically
excursions, as well as an open invitation to all of the special events, like slideshows, lectures, and films. But Smay says there's a lot more to it than that.
Being a member of the museum, you are putting your name behind an effort to preserve the railroad history of this area.
Museum has a lot of long-term goals for expansion, including the acquisition of a building on 9th Street.
We intend to build a full scale model of the Altoona Works in that building. Now, consider the fact that the Altoona Works at its zenith was about 7 miles long. We're talking about a pretty good-sized model.
The best news for most railroad enthusiasts is that the K4 will be a lot closer to home.
This year, we are planning trips from Altoona to the Y-switches at Duncansville every other weekend during the months of May through September. The price for those trips will be somewhere between $10 and $15.
And thanks to a grant from the PAT organization, local 3rd and 4th graders will get a first-hand taste of American railroad history.
We are going to be able to provide train rides on the K4 from Altoona to Roaring Spring for free.
Right now, the museum's biggest attraction, the K4, is at the Juniata Car Shop. The plans to build a 200-foot by 80-foot full-scale locomotive back shop by October will keep the semi-retired 70-year-old steam locomotive right here at the museum. Paul Alexander, TV 10 Action News, Altoona.
Was hit by a car last night while directing traffic at the scene of a house fire in Duncansville. Tonight, the flag outside the Cresson Fire Hall is at half-mast in memory of John Frie, better known as Jack. Jack Frie served as chief here from 1958 to 1970. Last night, he was handling traffic control along 3rd Avenue in Duncansville. Cresson had been called in to help battle a house fire. Just before 11 o'clock, police say Frie was hit by a car driven by Yvonne Smith of East Freedom, Blair County. He died about 3 hours later at Altoona's Mercy Hospital.
By all this, there's a solemn cloud that hangs over this fire company this evening. No one really knows what to do right now. We're going through the motions.
This is something you think always happens next door to somebody else. When it happens so close, you're just devastated. There's no words that you can say that will make things better other than Jack will be missed.
the driver, but say their investigation is not over. A memorial service for Jack Frie has been scheduled for Tuesday night.
Action News Night Beat for Sunday, January 17th. Keystone Country residents remember the life of Dr. Martin Luther King, and a Center County woman takes a leading role at Penn State. But the big story on Action News, a Keystone Country firefighter killed in the line of duty. Blair County authorities say Jack Frie of the Cresson Volunteer Fire Company died after being struck by a car last night. Frie was directing traffic at 3rd Avenue and 15th Street while firefighters were battling a blaze in an historic home. The fire destroyed the 3-story home, leaving a family of 4 homeless. The Kevin and Sharon Richardson family was out when the fire started. The cause of the blaze is being investigated.
Man is dead today, killed in the line of duty. Authorities say Jack Frie of the Cresson Fire Company died at Altoona Mercy Hospital after being hit by a car Saturday night. Frie was directing traffic at 3rd Avenue and 15th Street in Duncansville Saturday night when he was hit by a car driven by Yvonne Smith of East Freedom. Firefighters were battling a blaze in the 3-story home of Kevin Richardson at the time. The fire gutted the historic home, leaving the Richardson family homeless. The state police fire marshal is searching for the cause of that blaze.
From an outside wall of a fire company, it was the members' way of letting the entire community know they had suffered a loss. Frie will be buried on Wednesday.
Jack Frie died Sunday after being hit by a car at the scene of a fire in Duncansville Saturday night. Frie was a 50-year veteran of the Cresson Volunteer Fire Company and had once served as chief. Police today filed charges against the driver of the car that struck Frie. 27-year-old Yvonne Smith of East Freedom was charged with homicide by vehicle, drunken driving, and 4 other counts. Andy Briggs was in Cresson for the funeral, and he reports on the reasons behind the large turnout.
Few firefighters who came to Jack Frie's funeral knew him personally, but they came anyway because he was a fellow volunteer.
When a firefighter loses his life, you know, it's really to us as one of our brothers has lost his life at the scene of a fire.
Almost 70 fire companies from 7 counties were represented, including the paid departments in Johnstown and Altoona. Volunteer or professional, all firefighters share a common bond.
We've all been there. We've helped carry somebody out that's lost their life. Anytime somebody has a problem in the community, the first people they call are the volunteer fire departments or the career departments, regardless. And I think, you know, the tradition goes back a long way where we have uniforms, the fire trucks, and it's really a closeness between us.
Because all have shared the same experiences, gone through the same basic training, felt the same satisfaction after a job well done, and the same emptiness when tragedy strikes.
It's common fear of getting injured, but common hope that nobody else will.
Like Jack Frie, these volunteers know the dangers, and sometimes they feel unappreciated. But their communities rely on them, and that's enough to keep going.
Everyone cannot do it, but it's those few that feel they have to help their community in some way or feel the need to help, and this is the way they go about it.
Andy Briggs, News Center 6, Cresson.
A preliminary last weekend, Duncansville police say Yvonne Smith of East Freedom is accused of driving the car that struck and killed former Cresson Fire Chief John Frie last Saturday night. Frie was directing traffic at a fire in Duncansville when the accident occurred. Smith is also charged with reckless driving and 3 less serious traffic offenses. She's scheduled to answer the charges at a preliminary hearing next month. Volunteer firemen from all across Keystone Country gathered today in Cresson to say goodbye to John Frie. Cambria Region reporter Kevin Flanagan was there.
For blocks, the streets of Cresson were jammed with emergency vehicles. Fire trucks and ambulances formed one of the longest equipment processions that passed through the area in recent memory. Members of volunteer companies from across Keystone Country gathered under cold gray skies to pay their final respects to former Cresson Fire Chief Jack Frie, killed in the line of duty Saturday night.
He was a firefighter that not only lived for his community, but he did it for his community.
The capacity crowd at St. Francis Xavier Church heard Frie praised as a bona fide hero because the 67-year-old fire policeman was killed directing traffic for a neighboring fire company. The sadness of the Cresson volunteers was shared far beyond the community's boundaries.
And also our immediate fire company companies, Gallitzin, Lilly, Loretta, Ebensburg have been super. They've been here constantly asking, is there anything I can do?
Rain and cold had no effect as firefighters lined the streets of Cresson for the traditional final pass through crossed fire ladders. After serving his community for more than 4 decades as a fireman and member of the Cresson Fire Police, Jack Frie's final ride clearly signified a great loss for the volunteers of Cresson.
It's just something, every time you think about it, why, then, you know, the tears start all over again.
Kevin Flanagan, TV10 Action News, Cresson.
Accident in Cambria County. Police say 16-year-old Corey Crisco was traveling too fast for conditions just before midnight on State Route 53 in Lilly when he lost control of his vehicle. The car struck another car driven by 51-year-old Thomas Panic of Lilly. Panic wasn't seriously hurt, but Crisco and 15-year-old Ryan Davis died as a result of injuries suffered in the crash. Make an emergency landing after its left side landing gear did not lock up. The pilot kept the plane in the air until emergency crews were positioned. Penn State assistant football coach Craig Cirbus was one of the passengers.
And they couldn't get it down manually, and it was down 3/4, and the whole problem was a decision on how to make the best approach and best landing.
Cirbus was taking a Houston recruit to Pittsburgh to make a connecting flight. No one was hurt in the emergency landing. The aircraft sustained moderate damage. Service at the airport was halted while the plane was being removed from the runway. Bus service.
11th, there's a new candidate in the race for a...
Police say this man, Maxwell Berg of East Waterford, fired a 12-gauge shotgun at close range into his girlfriend Kimber Palley's car at 6 o'clock last evening. Killed in the shooting was Palley's 5-year-old daughter, Cassandra Patton. Palley and her 2-year-old half-brother, Joshua Mefford, were wounded. Patton reportedly died while she was being life-flighted to the Hershey Medical Center. Palley and Mefford are currently in Lewistown Hospital, where their conditions are not being released. Burge and Palley, both 24, have reportedly been living together for the last 4 years.
We really can't go into all the details, but we can say that there was a domestic situation.
Police searched for Burge until 3 this morning. At 6 a.m., Burge called police from his father's house and turned himself in. Burge was arraigned before District Justice Jackie Leister this afternoon in Port Royal.
Some general charge of criminal homicide, 2 charges of aggravated assault, 2 charges of reckless endangerment, and possession of an instrument of crime.
Burge faces a preliminary hearing next Friday and is currently being held in the Juniata County Prison without bail. Paul Alexander, TV10 Action News.
Altoona police tonight are at the scene of a car pedestrian accident in the city. Police say a 15-year-old boy was hit by a car on 17th Street near the Pleasant Valley Recreation Center at about 4:30 this afternoon. He was rushed to Altoona Hospital, but so far there's no word on his name or his condition. We hope to have more details for you tonight on the Action News Night Beat. After nearly 5 years in court, a Cambria County man faces a prison sentence in a fatal accident in Altoona. It was in April of 1983. The 28-year-old Wayne Smith was involved in an accident that killed 55-year-old Anna McConnell of Altoona. Smith's attorney argued the accident was caused by unsafe road conditions at 4th Street and 24th Avenue. But yesterday, a Blair County jury ruled Smith was drunk at the time of the crash, and that was the cause of the accident. Smith was found guilty of homicide by a vehicle while under the influence of alcohol, drunk driving, and driving through a stop sign. He faces a minimum 3-year prison sentence. 3 Blair County afternoon, 74-year-old Andrew Plougha was driving a Chevy Blazer when it collided with an empty coal truck. Plough's car went down a steep embankment after the collision, trapping him in the wreckage. After rescue crews from Cresson and Gallitzin managed to free him, Plougha was life-flighted to Memorial Hospital in Johnstown. He was expected to remain in surgery until sometime early this evening.
For noon Friday, April 15th, and that means it's dead. This morning, they didn't realize they'd find the fire so easily. Fire broke out at the Cassandra firehouse at about 1 o'clock this morning. Cassandra volunteers got their trucks and equipment out of the burning structure and then went to work trying to put out the blaze. Several other nearby companies were called to help. Damage in the fire has been set at $40,000. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. A state police fire marshal is trying to find the cause of that blaze.
Jan Berger was pulling out of a driveway when he was hit by a car headed west. 2 passengers in his car, 34-year-old Albert Egger and 40-year-old Arnold Smith, both injured. They received medical care at the scene. A passenger in the other car, 76-year-old Leroy Eckenrod, suffered a possible neck injury. He was taken from the accident scene by the Lilly Ambulance Company. And 2 more Cambria County drivers are being treated at area hospitals for injuries they suffered in this crash just after noon today. State police say a car driven by 58-year-old Rita Semmelsberger of Patton RD
pulled onto Route 36 from a side road and into the path of a car driven by 67-year-old James Chyla of Barnesboro. Semmelsberger was taken to Altoona Hospital, where she was being treated late this afternoon. Chyla was transported to Miners Hospital in Spangler, where he too was being treated. His car when it crashed into a tree and killed 2 of his passengers. The accident took place on Culver Road in Cambria Township last October 1st. Killed in the accident were 25-year-old Kevin Barrell and 17-year-old Kurt Lipka. The charges faced by Ardini include 2 counts of homicide by a vehicle, traveling at an unsafe speed, and underage drinking. A Cambria County criminal trial is underway without the defendant in the courtroom. The jury spent the day listening to testimony in the case of Ralph Blair of Winburn. He is charged with sexually molesting 2 teenage girls. Blair is currently free on bond and was expected to appear yesterday in the Cambria County courtroom for the start of his trial. After Blair failed to appear, Judge Gerard Long ordered the trial to get underway without the defendant. Cambria County Sheriff Jay Roberts said Blair is not yet considered a fugitive. It's up to the judge to issue an arrest warrant in that case.
And a motorcycle accident between Patton and Hastings on Route 36 has sent 1 man to a Johnstown hospital by life flight. No report has been filed by state police, but the accident happened in Elder Township about 9:15 tonight. Witnesses say the man apparently lost control of the cycle and went off the road. He was life flighted to Memorial Hospital in Johnstown. No condition report is available. And still ahead on Action News, the Pirates had a good day.
State police say 21-year-old Justin Hahn of Carthus lost control of his car along Route 879 and hit a cement culvert. Hahn was able to crawl out of the wreckage but died on the way to the hospital. That Clearfield County accident happened just after midnight. A Gallitzin man is in guarded condition tonight after a motorcycle accident in Cambria County. State police say 23-year-old Michael Adams lost control of the cycle on a rural road in Allegheny Township and crashed into a field. Adams was admitted to Altoona Hospital for treatment of head injuries.
Rescue workers cut a hole in his house to get him out. 45-year-old John Finnerty suffers from acute bronchitis and was having trouble breathing. Rescue workers had to cut a hole in the house because he was too big to fit through the bedroom door. It took a dozen men to lift him out of the house and onto a hospital cart. Wow.
Good night for the Bucks tonight over at the ball yard.
Yep. Stabbing them. It happened overnight in the parking lot of a bar in Ebensburg. Good evening. Ebensburg police say the double stabbing outside the Lakeview Lounge was over a traffic argument. Gerald and Dennis Delt of Saltville, Virginia, had stopped their truck at a railroad crossing, apparently to the displeasure of Wayne Petrosky of Revlock, who was behind them. Police say Petrosky began tailgating, and when the Delts pulled into the parking lot, Petrosky pulled out a knife and stabbed both men. Petrosky was picked up about an hour later and charged with 2 counts each of attempted homicide and related charges. He's now in the Cambria County Jail on $200,000 bond. Gerald Delt was flown by helicopter to Memorial Hospital and is in serious condition tonight. Dennis Delt is in fair condition at Lee. Police say other people were in Petrosky's car and more arrests are possible. An Altoona teenager was killed just before midnight in this 1-car accident in Bedford County. State police say 15-year-old Stanley Nichols died when the car he and 4 friends were riding in crashed along Route 867 just south of the Blair County line. Police say the driver, 17-year-old Harry Rickabaugh Jr., was traveling at an apparent high rate of speed when he lost control of the car. It hit several posts and utilities in the hospital are in guarded and satisfactory condition tonight. Rickabaugh was unhurt.
Counts of attempted murder after an argument this morning in Ebensburg. Police say 29-year-old Wayne William Petrosky allegedly stabbed 2 men from Virginia in the Lakeview Motel parking lot. One of the men, Gerald Delp, is listed in serious condition. His brother, Dennis, is in fair condition at a Johnstown hospital. Petrosky reportedly followed the 2 men to the motel because he did not like the way one of them was driving.
Leg was hanging off, and it came down, and there was a couple people underneath of the boat at the time.
Some of the injured were walking around in such a state of shock, paramedics had to tell them they had been hurt by flying debris.
And even folks who were nowhere near where the accident happened went into a state of shock when they heard what had occurred.
It kind of makes you wonder, like, whether these whenever they're, live,
Pre-run double, the Tigers lit it 9-4.
Sunday, August 28th, a day on dirt bikes turns deadly near Punxsutawney, Jefferson County. State police say 29-year-old Dennis Scott Lowry was killed when the dirt bike he was driving ran head-on into another bike at the top of a hill south of Punxsutawney this afternoon. 30-year-old Ronald Safer was driving the other bike. He was life-flighted to Pittsburgh and was in the operating room at last report. Police say the accident occurred on private property in Bell Township. Lowry and Safer were apparently spending the day riding when the accident happened. Some key
Center itself, when Challenger lifted off from here 32 months ago, there were 500 journalists. Today there are 5,000 from all over the world. And as we acknowledged a little earlier on this one occasion, everybody urging America back into space.
Peter, it's beginning to look a little different than we saw it yesterday, isn't it? Covered with that tower. She's slowly breaking her bounds with Earth.
Those SRBs, those solid rocket boosters, those two outboard white tanks, will just power along with that main engine tank. Those three engines power this craft right off at a much straighter up into the sky trajectory than ever before.
We're anticipating a hole here. We just heard at about 31 seconds. The problem is not.
We have a go for auto sequence start. Discovery's 4 redundant computers have assumed T-minus 23 seconds and counting. The SRB nozzle profile. T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. We're go for main engine start. 7, 6. We have main engine start. 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Roger, roll, Discovery. Control program, Houston now controlling.
Go, baby.
3 engines at 104%.
Wow.
3 good APUs, 3 good fuel cells. Standing by to begin throttle down to 65%. Engines throttling down now to maintain a certain speed as the spacecraft passes through max Q. Three engines at 65% now. The engines begin to throttle back up at about 59 seconds. Mark 1 minute. Velocity 2,300 feet per second. Altitude 5.9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 3 nautical miles.
Yeah, we said before, but the anchor booth at the Kennedy Space Center.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Maximum speed already.
We're through that problem area with the wind. And the next
Discovery given a go at throttle up. 3 engines at 104%. Velocity 3,200 feet per second. Altitude 10.8 nautical miles. Downrange distance 8 nautical miles.
In a little over 2 minutes, those solid rocket boosters ought to have done their job, and that's been one of the key focal points on this mission.
Glorious day. Those are the long-range tracking cameras.
25 seconds from solid rocket booster separation.
25 seconds. Those outboard rockets will fall off having done their job.
1 minute 45 seconds. 3 engines at 104%.
We've never had better pictures.
Major milestone coming up.
Velocity 4,800 feet per second. Altitude 20 nautical miles. Downrange distance 19 nautical miles. Standing by for solid rocket booster separation.
There it is. Separated.
There they go. Get it go.
She's on the tank. She's pushing 4,000 miles an hour right now, and that was a key point.
Solid rocket boosters
Get rid of those solid rocket boosters which caused Challenger's disaster.
Some did their job.
31.8 nautical miles. Altitude, downrange distance 38 nautical miles.
Nice to hear the cheers in the background.
Oh yeah, there it's a very telling moment here.
APUs still running at normal speed.
Right,
3 good fuel cells.
Peter was exceptionally
Call-ups here shortly from the Capcom about the capability to reach transatlantic
What you call a conservative trajectory in some cases, but they haven't got an enormous payload this time. This is a trajectory or a flight path designed for safety.
They used their extra energy to get altitude quicker, is what it amounted to.
39B.
How quickly things change. We got about another 5 minutes to go.
Should have that. One of those 3 main engines after corrections, Morone Spain.
They're coming to T plus 4 minutes now.
There it is right there. 2-engine Morone capability.
So even if they lose an engine.
standing by for negative return.
Take a look at those figures just on the side of your screen, and you get some enormous sense of speed now. They're traveling at about 5,000 feet per second.
And ultimately, of course, they'll be pushing 17.8.
Negative return.
That means negative return back to this landing site.
That
Now we're
pilot
going
indicates
8,000
Discovery now
feet
can
per
no longer
second.
turn around and return to the launch site in the event of an abort. 4 minutes, 20 seconds, velocity 8,700 feet per second, altitude 59 nautical miles, downrange distance 148 nautical miles.
That's a great...
Lost an engine now. They can still land safely in Africa.
There was no...
Matthews was found Thursday in Reed Township, about 500 yards from the Clearfield County line. She had been raped and beaten, allegedly by Stephen Edmiston of Petersburg, Huntington County, who was arrested the same day. Today, authorities officially determined that the body was located in Cambria County. Murder charges against Edmiston must now be refiled, and a hearing will be scheduled. Other charges against Edmiston will be handled by Clearfield County, where those crimes allegedly occurred. One person was killed in a motorcycle accident tonight in Blair County. Details are still unavailable, but reportedly the accident happened along Foot of Penn Road near Duncansville. We'll have a tape report tomorrow morning on the first edition. Police expect to file drunken driving charges against the operator of the car that caused this head-on crash in Cambria County overnight. Susquehanna Township Police say 24-year-old Joseph Stevens of Ravenna, Ohio, was northbound on Route 219 when his car crossed into the opposite lane. The other driver was not seriously hurt, but Stevens is in guarded condition tonight at Miners Hospital.
Thursday, November, out in
7:25, fire personnel moved out to the top of Sawmill Hill, a wooded area less than 1 mile north of the airport. It was there rescue crews found 22-year-old Jeff Ansler sitting by his entangled plane, apparently unhurt.
He climbed out himself, and upon checking him down there, we found nothing but several bruises and contusions, but like I say, he will be all right. He was talking to us. He was very alert, very conscious. He knew what happened. And
Ansler was reportedly flying from Ohio State to visit his girlfriend at Penn State when he first noticed trouble. He was then directed to nearby Ebensburg Airport, where he later attempted to land. But here's where he landed, 3/4 of a mile away.
The Civil Air Patrol arrived soon after to investigate. They found no signs of an engine fire, but did find a perfectly protected cockpit. They say Ansler should be commended for his emergency landing.
What I can see from the airplane, it's very possible that he had the engine stalled or shut off before he landed in order to decrease his speed, which would have made a softer landing. The guy did an excellent job.
The plane is a total loss. Officials at Johnstown's Memorial Hospital say Ansler is doing fine. Steve Kearns, News Center 6, Cambria Township.
An Ebensburg man died.
Tonight, Ansler's light plane caught fire and crashed near Revlock in Cambria Township. Civil Air Patrol Captain Joe Thrash says the pilot knew he was in trouble and was forced to crash land the plane.
What it appears happened, now this is only theory, that he had stopped the engine or the engine had stalled and he was trying to make a glide into the airport or was trying to find a nice open spot to land in. He came into the woods what appears to be at a fairly slow speed, did an excellent job of getting the airplane in.
Thrash says officials from the Federal Aviation Administration will investigate the crash tomorrow. The acting
Stephen Rex Edmiston was arraigned before Cambria County Judge Gerard Long today. The Huntington County man is charged with abducting, raping, and murdering 2-year-old Bobby Joe Matthews back in early October. Security was tight as Judge Long read the list of charges. District Attorney Tim Creaney says he's going after the death penalty in this case. A decision on that issue will be made after local authorities receive a final report from the state crime lab in Erie. Edmiston will be back in court on Thursday to face a bail hearing and a demand from the prosecution for a blood sample. Opening statements are
operator as her father struggled with a burglar. Phil Alvarado has this remarkable story.
Valerie Nelson arrived for work at 6:30 a.m. last Wednesday. At 6:38, she took her first call as an Arlington Police 911 operator. 8-year-old Laura Hollingsworth was at the other end of the line.
Arlington emergency.
There's somebody in my house, and you live on Jefferson, and what's the number?
I got your address. Somebody's in your house?
Yes, and he just broke in with a gun, and he wanted my father's money, and it's, what's the number?
I have have your address. Is that man still there?
Yes.
It was just get all the information and pray that they could get there fast, and within seconds the gun goes off, so it just kept escalating. And I've never had such a call before. Never.
During most of the 11-minute conversation, the police communications officer and the 8-year-old girl helped each other to bring help as the girl's father, Dale Hollingsworth Jr., and an 18-year-old suspected burglar fought a bloody battle with knives. The girl's 14-year-old brother, Buddy Hollingsworth, also was at home at the time.
Honey, it's okay. What's going on?
You got a knife.
Your brother?
No, the guy, please. Oh, God. Buddy.
Okay, it's okay, honey. I got police on the way. Is this other man with your brother?
No, he's my father. Please.
Wait, okay, honey. I have help on the way. Who has... Okay, I heard a shot.
Oh, he killed the guy.
Okay, who shot who? Your father shot who? Honey, can you tell me who got shot?
Shot the guy who came in here.
Your father shot the burglar?
No, Berg did.
The 18-year-old suspect was killed. The boy's father remains hospitalized in fair condition with stab wounds. The 14-year-old fired a total of 3 shots. One shot hit a car outside. An Arlington police officer was injured slightly by flying glass.
Phil Alvarado with that story from Texas. At the White House, a new appointment to the cabinet of President-elect.
The suicide itself showed no clear-cut signs of satanic-type suicide, other than the classic heavy metal album Motley Crue, which was playing at the time. But other than that, it doesn't show any signs of satanic, so I don't want to list this as a satanic suicide, and I don't think it should be listed as such, in all fairness to the family. However, there is, this person has had reference with Satanism as a religion.
Authorities say the practice of Satanism is alive around the area. Here, symbols of the inverted pentagram and the numbers 666 are painted on the walls of an underpass, signs of the devil. Coroner John Barron recently returned from a seminar on satanic cults. Barron says the definition of a Satanist is someone who believes whatever your natural being feels, you should go ahead and do. He says Satanism may involve human sacrifice, but it's not status quo in all categories of Satanism. Still, some groups can be dangerous.
This particular group, what we call a dabbler, can become dangerous due to the fact that they get into drugs, they get into alcohol, and then what they've read, they start to react.
Barron says it used to be drugs and alcohol that would turn the young on. Now they're turning to a new high, Satanism, which he says is turning into the new thing of the 90s. Sari Pador, News.
Devil worship. 24-year-old Tal Reed of Cresson shot himself in the head yesterday in this railroad underpass covered with satanic graffiti. Police say Reed was an admitted devil worshiper. He was found clutching a statue of Satan and was listening to heavy metal music on some headphones. The Cambria County coroner believes Reed's suicide was influenced by Satanism and drugs. He had alcohol, cocaine, and pot in his system. The incident has Cresson residents worried and afraid to speak out.
I'm scared. I want to move. Because, I don't know, my mom says just to forget about, because people that do that are either bored with their life or they're crazy.
Cresson area authorities speculate other young people may have dabbled in devil worship with Reed. For the past 3 months, they've investigated reports of grave robbing, animal mutilation, and an incident at a local church where someone painted the Virgin Mary red.